Once upon a time there was a mother pig and her 3 piglets. 3 brothers are the same height. Round, pink, with the same funny tails. All summer the pigs played in the green grass, basked in the sun, basked in the puddles. But then autumn came. One day my mother said that it was time for them to think about winter. She asked them to build a big house. The younger brother said that winter is still far away. The middle brother said that he would build his own house when needed. And the older brother decided to build the house himself. The younger and middle brothers did nothing but play their games. It got colder and colder every day. The younger brother decided to build a house out of straw. The middle brother thought it would be very cold in the thatched house in winter. He decided to build a house from twigs and twigs. By the evening their housing was ready. They were very proud of themselves and could not get enough of their buildings. Now they were free and could do whatever they wanted. They decided to go to their older brother and see what kind of house he had built for himself. The older brother was busy building. He applied stones, kneaded clay and slowly built himself a reliable, durable home. The younger brothers found their older brother at work. They were very surprised at what kind of fortress he was building. The elder brother calmly continued to work. The younger and middle brothers began to joke and laugh at his house. They were so amused that their screeching echoed far across the lawn. The elder brother asked to be quiet, because the wolf could hear them. The younger and middle brothers were amused even more. They decided that the older brother was just a coward. And the 2 brave brothers went for a walk. On the way, they sang and danced, and when they entered the forest, they made such a noise that they woke up the wolf who was sleeping under the pine tree. The disgruntled and hungry wolf went to the place where the screeching of 2 stupid pigs came from. The brothers walked merrily and talked about how easily they would deal with the wolf. And suddenly they saw a real living wolf. He was standing behind a large tree. He had very evil eyes and a huge toothy mouth. The brothers were so frightened that their thin tails trembled finely. The wolf prepared to jump. He snapped his teeth and blinked his right eye. The pigs suddenly came to their senses and, screeching across the forest, rushed to run away. Raising clouds of dust, they rushed each to his own house. The younger brother ran to his thatched hut and slammed the door in front of the wolf. The wolf growled and demanded to open the door. The younger brother, out of fear, could not utter a word. Then the wolf began to blow. The light roof instantly flew off the thatched hut. The wolf took a deep breath and blew a second time, and the thatch house flew in all directions. The wolf was delighted, snapped his teeth, and pounced on his younger brother. But the pig deftly dodged and ran. He ran to the house of the middle brother. The brothers managed to lock themselves up and looked at each other in dismay. The wolf got angry and began to blow. The house is slightly askew. The wolf blew a second, then a third, then a fourth time. But the house was still standing. The wolf took a deep breath and blew for the 5th time. The house shook and fell apart. Only one door stood for some time in the middle of the ruins. In horror, the piglets rushed to the house of their elder brother. The wolf ran after them. He was sure that this time the pigs would not run away from him. The piglets quickly rushed past the large apple tree without even hitting it. And the wolf did not have time to turn and hit the apple tree, which covered him with apples. One hard apple hit him between the eyes. A big bump jumped on the wolf's forehead. At this time, the younger and middle brothers managed to run into the house of the older brother and bolt the door. The wolf ran to the door, growled and demanded to open the door. The younger brothers were very scared and could not say anything in return. And the elder brother knew that he and his brothers had nothing to fear in a solid stone house. Then the wolf sucked in more air and blew as soon as he could. But no matter how much it blew, not a single stone moved. And then he looked up and noticed a large, wide chimney on the roof. He carefully climbed onto the roof and began to go down the pipe. The pigs heard a rustle. The elder brother immediately guessed what was the matter. He quickly rushed to the cauldron in which water was boiling and tore off the lid. The wolf went down the pipe and fell straight into the cauldron. His eyes widened to his forehead. The scalded wolf flew out with a wild roar and rushed into the forest. And the three little pigs looked after him and were glad that they had so cleverly taught the evil robber a lesson. From that time on, the brothers and their mother began to live together under one roof. Once there was a woodcutter with 2 children and their stepmother. The boy's name was Hansel, and the girl's name was Gretel. They lived so poorly that sometimes there was not even anything to eat. And then one evening he lay in bed, pondering how to feed the children further. His wife advised him to have children in the forest, light a fire, give a piece of bread each and leave them there, not all 4 of them die of hunger. But the woodcutter did not agree. And until then, his wife persuaded him that he finally agreed. And the children, because of hunger, also could not sleep and heard everything that their stepmother said to their father. And when the parents fell asleep, Hansel secretly rushed out of the house. The moon was shining brightly, and the white stones glittered like coins. Hansel pocketed as many of them as he could fit. Then he returned home and the children went to bed. In the morning, the stepmother came to the children, gave each of them a piece of bread, and they all went to the forest together. On the way, Hansel threw out white stones one by one. When they arrived at the clearing, my father began to light a fire. He ordered the children to sit near the fire and make sure that it didn't go out, while they and their stepmother would go for more firewood. They sat, tired, and fell fast asleep. When the children woke up, it was a dark night all around. And when a full month had risen in the sky, Hansel took his sister by the hand and went, looking for the way through the pebbles, which glittered like new coins, and showed them the way. They walked all night long, and at dawn they came to their father's house. Some time passed. And the children again heard how the stepmother one night began to beg their father to get rid of the children. He refused, but his wife did not want to listen to him. She cursed and expressed all sorts of reproaches to him. When the parents fell asleep, Hansel, like the last time, wanted to collect stones, but the stepmother locked the door and the boy could not leave the house. Early in the morning, the children were given a piece of bread each, even less than the previous time. On the way to the forest, Hansel shredded his piece in his pocket and threw the crumbs on the ground. The stepmother took them even further into the forest. Again a big fire was lit, and the father ordered the children to watch the fire while they and their stepmother chopped some more wood. When lunchtime came, Gretel shared her piece of bread with Hansel. And they fell asleep. We woke up when the dark night fell. And then a month came up, and they got together on their way, but they could not find a single crumbs, because thousands of birds fluttering in the forest had long been eating those crumbs. So the children walked for a very long time, but they could not get out of the forest. Suddenly, the road led them to the hut. Coming closer, the children saw that the house was all built of bread and biscuits, and the windows were made of pure sugar. Hansel reached up and broke off a piece of the roof, while Gretel went to the window and began gnawing at its windows. And then the door in the hut opened wide, and the old woman came out, leaning on a crutch. Hansel and Gretel were so scared that they even dropped their tidbits from their hands. And the old woman was kind and invited them to her hut. There was already abundant food on the table: milk, cookies, apples, and nuts. After dinner, the old woman made 2 clean beds for the children, and Hansel and her sister thought they were in heaven. But the old woman only pretended to be affectionate, but in fact she was an evil witch, who built her bread hut for this purpose in order to lure children. Early in the morning, while the children were sleeping, she took Hansel and put him in a small cage. And she ordered her sister to do everything that the wicked witch demanded of her. The old woman decided to fatten the boy in order to eat him later. So Gretel began to cook the most delicious food for Hansel, and she herself got nothing but leftovers. Some time passed, and the boy did not get fat. Then the old woman did not want to wait any longer, and decided to cook and eat Hansel. She ordered Gretel to light the stove and apply water. When the stove warmed up, the old woman ordered her to climb into the stove and see if it was hot enough. So she wanted to push the girl into the fire and bake her. But Gretel knew what was on her mind. She said that she did not know how to get in there, and asked the witch to show herself. The old woman got angry and climbed into the oven. Then Gretel pushed her and slammed the shutter behind the witch. Wow, how terribly the old woman howled then. Gretel, meanwhile, rushed to Hansel and opened the cage. Having freed their brother, they went to the witch's room, in which there were boxes of pearls and precious stones in all corners, filled their pockets with them, and went home. For several days the children were looking for their way back. The forest seemed more and more familiar, and at last they saw their father's house in the distance. How glad he was to see his children alive. Hansel and Gretel poured on the floor all the pearls and gems they had taken from the witch. There was no need to think about food. And they began to live, and rejoice. And the father drove the evil stepmother out of the house.